Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're back for another AutoCentral show, and we are back in my studio at home, and Wandile is back at his home as well. How's it, Wandile, Sishi?
Good morning, George. It's good to be back. Fortunately, we're not together, but you know, this is just the way we live now.
Yeah, we took a decision to, do the next couple of shows back in the way we did it last year. And the reason we decided to do that was because of this second wave, right?
Yeah, I think it's rather safe than sorry. We've seen what happens when we don't take precautions. And this is definitely the only way we can get the show going while staying safe.
Oh, keep the show going, and staying safe, as you say. It's the responsible thing to do, I guess. So we're back here on a video apart, which isn't ideal. I miss you, Wandile.
I miss you too. Don't tell my girlfriend.
I won't do that, indeed. So, AutoCentral back for another show. South Africa's #1 motoring podcast, powered by AutoTrader, South Africa's trusted and largest marketplace. And just a reminder, Wandile, where can we find AutoCentral?
So you can find us every Monday at 9, naturally, if you want to listen to us live, on AutoCentral.com. But we're also streaming on Spotify, Apple Music, and now we also have the video show, which is always hosted on our YouTube channel.
Yep.
Which is at AutoTrader.
AutoTrader SA, right?
Correct.
So last week we spoke about double cabs as the king in South Africa, or should I say bakkies are the king in South Africa. South Africans seem to love bakkies, right, Wandile? Is the king of the road at the moment.
Yeah, I think we're kind of controversial in saying that they are the reigning champs, considering, actually, if you go back in history, sedans have always been the #1 best seller in South Africa. So by saying that bakkies were, pegged it to be the champion, I think it was only fair that we actually went back and looked at how sedans are looking and how the global markets, the export markets as well as the import markets, is actually tackling the sedan body type.
Well, let's get into sedans, and are sedans losing their popularity? Kicking off with bakkies being the king of the road, SUVs, searches for SUVs constantly rising. And sedans were the car of yesteryear, but still seem to be, the car with the, or should I say, the body type with the highest volume, right?
Yeah, so globally, sedans have always been the #1, I guess, in terms of volume, body type, and a large part of that has to do with the Chinese market. So when we're doing a little bit of research, something I find interesting is a lot of these OEMs actually look at the Chinese markets just because of the scale and volume of purchases there, and I guess demand, and they use that as kind of a trial basis of how the rest of the world is going to react in terms of what they can provide.
Well,
which is interesting because I think it's the opposite.
Is the Chinese market really representative of the rest of the world?
I wouldn't say so. I mean, it's environmental. And I think the reason why the Chinese population prefers sedans is not necessarily like a use basis. I think it's just a historic thing. There's lots of prestige that come with owning a sedan. So I think it comes from that point of view. Whereas in other parts of the world, such as South Africa, that's not necessarily the case. Sedans aren't the status vehicle. They're kind of just a convenience vehicle, really, more than anything. Yeah.
Well, I mean, some stats from 2019 show that sedans and saloons, I don't think you get saloons in South Africa, so I think it's more of an American term, that, are the second most preferred body type amongst consumers of passenger cars. And sales total almost 18.9 million units in 2019, and which is 1 in every 4 units sold for passenger cars. But this volume has dropped by about 7%, and the total market posted a 4% decline. So passenger, or should I say saloon or sedans, falling in terms of volume at double the rate of the entire market.
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable. When you read these numbers out, it's kind of shocking because even though sedans are losing popularity globally, we still see that the numbers are so high that they're still, in the top 3 in the top four, regardless of markets.
Yeah.
They're definitely not dead.
Well,
to answer that question, I don't think
over half of the vehicle sales globally for sedans is in China, right?
Yeah. And as soon as the Chinese market changes their preference to a different body type, that's when I think things are going to change. And it's going to be quite interesting to see how with the kind of the rise of EVs and the rise of these different sort of modes of transports. It's going to be interesting to see what OEMs, what their response is to sedans.
Yeah.
Because we've seen that there's body types that are being converted to sedans, and for us, it's like, why are they doing that? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, I mean, China seems to suffer from very similar things to other consumer markets, and that is they've got very high debt levels at the moment. Are they going to suffer the same fate? Are sedans going to suffer the same fate in China as they've suffered in other parts of the world and in South Africa? I mean, I think South Africa, in my opinion, is unique to buckies and double cabs. We're just that way inclined, which is great.
Exactly. I think for me, the strangest factor that I've seen is kind of you get these popular, specifically in South Africa. Let's take the A-Class or the RS3, where you have an extremely popular hatchback that's been converted to sedan. And I never really understood why until I started to do some research into the rest of the world, understanding that some markets actually just want sedans. And that's why these cars are there. And they're beautiful. They're stunning cars. I think conversions are not bad. But it is a bit strange in the South African context.
Well, I mean, one of our expert journalists who we're going to get on the show just now, to do our car review for us, said earlier on that, possibly because China has so many sedans or manufactures and sells so many sedans that it becomes scalable and cheaper to push those vehicles into other markets.
Yeah, that's definitely something I didn't think of. The economies of scale, when you're doing that, like that quantity of vehicles, it makes a lot of sense to kind of, I guess, almost force the markets into taking your preferred body type, and it becomes cheaper for them as well. So there's benefits, I think, for the OEMs as well as the consumer. Well,
I mean, it's not binary, but I'm gonna say it anyway. But I think sedans are in a lot of ways a dumb body type, because it's not as useful or versatile as an SUV, and except for if you want a sports car. I mean, let's not put sports cars in the category of sedans. Sedans is kind of this like meh body type. It's not high enough.
Yeah.
It's not big enough inside. It doesn't have enough boot space. It's just like meh.
I completely agree with you. So I definitely prefer sports cars, and that's why my preferred body type is the coupe. And the sedan is sitting in such a strange middle ground between you have a hatchback, which is smaller and cheaper, and has the four doors, and then you have an SUV which has that, but it's more practical. Then you have a double cab, which is even more practical. So sedans in the South African market, I think, is a convenience car. And not necessarily, the best option or the all-rounder winner, which is why I think buckies are winning.
Another thing I heard from Chad was, the worldwide market related to taxis and public transport also drives demand of sedans, which makes sense because again, Chinese market big when it comes to sedans. Companies like Toyota can create economies of scale, bring the cost down, and then you've got the global market in taxis. I mean, excluding the London taxi cab. What body type do you think the London taxi cab is?
I think it's like a wagon. I have no idea.
A wagon.
It probably comes from like short carriages, and they've kind of converted it into like a car. I have no idea what that body type is.
All I know is you don't want to crash into a London taxi cab. You'll come off second best.
I heard they're super strong.
And then let's talk about electrification for a second. And Tesla's shown it can win customers with electrification through its popular Model 3, and the Model 3 is a hatchback sedan, and it's in its second strategy to make sedans more fashionable and appealing through the Coupe sedan. Now, I suppose the Coupe is a little bit of a kind of, if you want, it's like a double cab, but for sports cars, in my opinion, because you've got a little bit of a sporty looking car.
There's no body type I hate more than the Coupe Sedan.
Why?
Or the Gran Coupe. It doesn't make any sense. It's like a broken. It just doesn't make sense. Do you want to be fast? Do you want to look sporty, or are you going to be fetching kids? It's just a very confusing thing for me, especially because I love sports cars, and I think the Coupe should stay a Coupe and the Sedan should stay a Sedan.
Yeah.
But
well, let's talk about the electrification of all of these vehicles. I mean, sedans have been the first car to become electric vehicles, for lack of a better term, and I don't think it's because. I mean, my opinion is I don't think it's because sedans are the best car to put electric motors in. It's just because of the sheer volumes and demand. As we put out just now. The taxi and transport industry largely uses sedans. So maybe the electrification of the sedan was just because of that's where the volume lies currently. But is it the best car to put an electric motor in?
I think a lot of people would say no. SUVs, because of the space, could be a better option. Buckies potentially could also be better than sedans. But the research and development that goes into electric vehicles and actually getting a vehicle on the road is so high that, like you said, I think the demand of sedans and just how many there are makes sense to kind of trial it with that first and then kind of roll over into the different body types.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that an SUV or a double cab bucky has more space to put batteries in the floor. Rather than a sedan, which means that with the increased torque and power that you get out of an electric vehicle, you don't have to worry too much about additional weight because you can put those extra batteries in, get longer range potentially, and solve solve two problems with one stone.
Yeah, I think you always mention just if OEM started to kind of introduce double cab electric vehicles in South Africa, I think things would change greatly. I think people are waiting for it. Why not just do it? Because people want it. There's lots of appetite. We've seen on searches, people are searching for Hiluxes that are electric, which don't exist.
So what category would you put the I-Pace in? Would you put the I-Pace into SUV, or would you put the I-Pace into the category of coupe sedan, the one you hate?
I want to say SUV, but I think it could be a coupe or coupe SUV even.
SUV.
That's kind of where I'd put it in.
Yeah.
But it's a stunning car, so I'll let that one slide.
You'll let it slide. Okay, Wandi's letting it slide. So, before we get on to getting our expert journalist Chad Lückhoff onto our show to review the BMW 235i Gran Coupé versus the Mercedes-Benz AMG A35 4MATIC Sedan, what is your final verdict when it comes to the future of sedans, Wandi?
So to answer the question, I don't think they're dead. But I do think that things are going to change a lot. And in 2021, I think buckies are still going to be the most popular. And unless something drastic happens, I don't think that's going to change. So sedans aren't dead. Bucks are definitely in. And I think we should watch out for hatchbacks as well. They might be, also making a little bit of a comeback.
Well, coupe sedan in your case, right?
I hate that word.
You hate that word. I know you do. All right. So from special edition double cabs last week to this week's hot sedan chat that we just had, which could assist in turning the tide in favor of sedans in 2021. Our expert journalist Chad Lückhoff joins the conversation today to unpack a highly anticipated matchup of the BMW 235i Gran Coupé 2020 versus the Mercedes-Benz AMG A35 4MATIC. How's it, Chad? And welcome, first of all, to the show. Two interesting cars you're going to tell us about today.
Yeah, morning, guys. Always a pleasure to be here with you guys. And yeah, I'll tell you what, very interesting vehicles. As you guys have been chatting on about the sedans and that, it really is a bit of a strange move from both Mercedes-Benz and, BMW in introducing these vehicles in what is clearly a diminishing market at this current point in time. And as much as they, so much alike, we've seen this formula before. And these two cars actually couldn't be more different in their own rights.
Okay. I mean, so what is the, so let me ask this question. Is the only similarity between the M235i Gran Coupé and the Mercedes-AMG A35 4MATIC the fact that it's a sedan? Is that the only similarity?
George, you would have a tough time if you just had to if I had to show you their statistics without the names on it, you would have a tough time separating them.
Oh, okay. So
lengths, weights. It's both of them run 2-liter turbocharged inline-4 engines. Both of them transversely mounted, sending power predominantly to the front wheels, but with all-wheel drive systems. They're making similar power. We're sitting with 225 kilowatts in the BMW and 225 kilowatts in the Mercedes-AMG A35.
Okay.
And then they're only separated by 50 Newton meters.
So, I misunderstood you. I thought you said that they are so different that sedan is the only commonality. Whereas what you're describing now is that they're very similar.
They couldn't be more similar, yet at the same time, they couldn't be more differently executed.
Okay, so I'm not getting confused for nothing.
No. But I think this is where the consumer is actually going to struggle a little bit, is because on paper, they look so wonderful, and you're going to have your heart set and wonder, you're going to hate me for this. So many people, and we've seen it in our YouTube comments on the review that I did on it, so many people are like, why all the hate for the BMW? And this is now the BMW fanboys that are sitting there and don't understand that, maybe they missed the mark. And that is going to make it so difficult for them to accept that if it's so similar on paper, why is the Merc better?
Can we go back one step back? So the A35 was actually a hatchback that's been converted to sedan. And the 235i used to be a coupe that's been converted into, I guess, a Gran Coupé.
All I'm seeing is
why do you think they did
angle grinder, when you say convert.
Let's take a little bit of a step back there, Wandile, because spoken like a true BMW fanboy, by the way. The Mercedes-Benz, the A-Class sedan was actually designed for the Chinese market because of their love for sedans. And seeing the success of it there, I actually saw the launch of this in 2018 in China. I saw the launch of the A-Class sedan there. And they just thought that, well, listen, while this vehicle is doing so well in the Chinese market, and it's doing surprisingly well in the European market as well, let's take the old A45 drivetrain and powertrain and put it in the sedan and make a bit of a hot version of it. Why not? And it's worked really well. So it's old A45 technology. They've just called it A35 because there is new A45 technology that, well, sadly, we're not going to get here. But in any case, the BMW, though, is nothing more than a knee-jerk reaction to this. They have taken basically the same platform as the 2 Series Grand Tourer. They've taken the same front-wheel drive-based platform that you're going to get in the BMW X2, even disturbingly similar to the platform that you're going to get in the 1 Series hatchback. And we all know the amount of love for the front-wheel drive-based BMW 1 Series hatchback. And they've taken that and they've turned it into a sedan. It's not a good combination. It's probably the worst execution of a BMW ever.
Well, I mean, one of the comments that you make, Chad, is that BMW doesn't have great ergonomics, and you seem like a Merc fan. To say that
I'm not, and it's actually strange. I'm not, but I'm sorry to interject there, George, but I'm definitely not a big fan, but. It is a day and night difference.
Interior.
I enjoy driving some BMWs. I enjoy driving some Mercs. There are BMWs that I detest, and there are Mercedes-Benzes and Mercedes-AMGs, believe it or not, that I detest likewise. And I just climbed into the 2 Series Gran Coupé, the M235i Gran Coupé, and the steering wheel is off center. You take about 20 minutes to get your seat right, and even then, it doesn't feel right.
Why would the steering wheel be off center?
You tell me. It's the same problem in the X2. It feels like it's an inch off center, and that is massively disturbing to me. You climb in, and the B pillar is right here by your head. You almost need to climb in forward and then fall backwards into the seat.
Off center towards the door.
Off center towards the door.
Interesting. I've never noticed that.
It is really disturbing. I mean, older French cars and some of the Italian cars would have pedals that were offset. And this was largely just to create a little more space for either the transmission tunnel or the wheel arch, which is actually right there by your feet. So those were sometimes offset to the side. I cut my teeth on French cars, so I'm quite accustomed to sitting in a bit of a strange position. But it's definitely nowhere near as linear as, let's say, some of the other Japanese offerings. Things like Lexus, things like Mazda that really concentrate on body ergonomics. Clearly, the Germans are built differently to the Japanese.
Well, both of these are German cars, right?
Correct, they are.
And Merc seems to have their steering wheel in the center. Whereas you're saying BMW's got the steering wheel, what feels like slightly offset. I'd be interested to know whether mathematically that is the case, or is it just a perception based on the rest of the styling,
or based on my physical build,
or on your physical build,
which others may not experience that. This could even be a deliberate thing, in the same way that those Italian and those French vehicles offset the pedals to create space or to make allowances for certain things. This may be a deliberate exercise, and that is possibly the least that they could offset it without it becoming awkward, because they needed the space to either clear firewall areas or certain other mechanics in the vehicle.
So sitting here listening to this, Chad, first of all, what do these two cars cost, number one? And number two, who would the typical driver be? If I'm sitting listening to the show and I'm a certain person, what would the target market be here?
Let's start with the target market, then I'll get into the pricing. It really is a tough call to sort of put let's say a specific LSM or a specific demographic for it. I would picture the typical buyer, male or female. I can see more female clientele gravitating towards the non-performance models of the Gran Coupé and the A-Class sedan, but I think the performance models are definitely going to be in the wheelhouse of the early to mid 30s, a little more successful because they're not cheap exercises. Young family, needs the practicality of a four-door vehicle, likes the additional boot space that a sedan offers over a hatchback. And there is definitely an increase in that. It is definitely more practical in that regards. But is somebody that appreciates driving dynamics and travels on good roads, so probably somebody city centers, suburban, and possibly taking the odd long drive, not somebody that ventures out into, the unknowns. For that, you'd have your typical SUVs and double cabs and the likes. I'd say somebody that's relatively successful, young family, enjoys sporty driving.
Very, very good. And what does this cost?
Okay, so the BMW starts at just shy of 832,000 Rand. It's quite a whack of money, and that's before options. The Mercedes-AMG is a little pricier, at just over 890,000. Once again, before options. So with a couple of options, you could quickly tickle the R1 million mark.
Wow.
So just because do you think that these sedans would turn the tide in favor of sedans? These hot sedans, these are, I guess, converted sedans.
It's a tough call. I would really be guessing, and it would be purely speculative and opinion. I don't think it's going to be a resurrection. It's going to enjoy a section of market share, but we've seen too many of the more affordable compact sedans fall by the wayside. It's the likes of the Hyundai Elantra, the VW Jetta. Whoever thought we'd see a day when the VW Jetta is discontinued?
That's so true.
It's discontinued. Yeah. And that those were respectable quality products, but they fell by the wayside just because of poor performance, and people would rather pick up a Creta or a Tiguan, or a T-Roc, something of the sort. So it really is tough. I don't think we're going to see a resurrection from this. The typical market, I think it's a sort of person that's possibly looking to downscale from let's say a 3 Series or a C class as they get a little older, looking for something that they're still familiar with, but they don't need quite that size as the world starts getting a little more busier around them. Definitely that younger audience. Eh?
Well, we're fast running out of time. So Chad, very finally, your overall score out of 10.
The BMW gets a fantastic 2 out of 10 from me.
I think that's the lowest score we've ever got.
Oh my God.
Would not buy.
I think that is...
No, would not buy, and I would not recommend that anybody else buys it either.
Okay, and the AMG?
9 out of 10.
9 out of 10. Wow.
I cannot recommend this vehicle high enough.
Wow, okay.
They are just two polar opposite vehicles. One was built from the ground up with a purpose. The other one is a knee-jerk afterthought reaction that's just overdone, overthought, and unfortunately under-engineered.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, our very expert and knowledgeable Chad Lückhoff. If you want to, as usual, go and find Chad's reviews on autotrader.co.za, South Africa's #1 largest and most trusted motoring marketplace. And there you can find things like opinions, features, trim levels, depreciation, and the guys give you a lot of food for thought. They drive these cars. I wouldn't say they drive for a living. They give opinion for a living. So driving for a living is I suppose taxi driver territory. They're not taxi drivers, but they drive these cars. Very lucky enough to be out in the open all day long, Chad. So thanks for joining us as usual, and thanks for giving us that review on the BMW M235i Gran Coupé versus the Mercedes-Benz AMG A35 4MATIC Sedan. We'll see you next time, Chad.
Lovely. Thank you very much, guys. You guys have a great show. Cheers.
Ciao. All right, so back with another round of everyday people sending AutoTrader some motoring-related questions about all things car buying. So Wandile and I now will attempt to answer some of those burning questions. Wandile, who have we got questions from, and what are those questions?
So some really interesting questions have come in on Ask AutoTrader this week. The first one comes from Stasio, who's asking, I've just finished paying my car. How do I get the logbook from the financial bank I used? And what are the costs, if any?
I've just finished paying for my car. How do I get the logbook from the financial bank I used? And what are the costs? Now, I mean, I don't quite understand how do I get the logbook. I'd say first, congratulations for paying off your car, Stasio, because that is not usually very easy to achieve, and most people get this burning feeling of changing their car before it's paid off, and they get themselves into even more debt. So well done. Keep driving that car for a while and save some money. As for the car's documentation, you'll be able to source it directly from that institution. I'm not sure what you mean by logbook, but whatever paperwork that exists that the bank does have, simply call their helpline. And if you're referring to the NATIS documents, just ask for them. They'll give it to you. Because the car's paid off, the title has to now transfer to you. The documents are usually delivered by courier. You usually don't have to ask for them, but if you haven't received them, just ask, and you'll get them. And you'd probably have to show proof of ID, proof of ownership, all of that stuff. And you'll have to re-register the car in your name, not ownership, but title, because the financial institution has obviously been the title holder of your car while it's under debt. Talking about that, and that gives the financial institution the ability to repossess the car, because there's two types of indications on the papers of the car. The one is owner, and the other one is title holder. And you have to change that title holder to yourself and away from the bank the moment the car is paid off.
So in terms of cost, then just courier costs will be the only thing that you have to kind of consider.
Well, I mean, I would imagine that the bank will just send it to you. This is normally just kind of run of the mill You'd get the NATIS documents. It's a standard operating procedure of the bank. They don't want to sit with NATIS documents in their safes and be responsible for your NATIS documents. So they will more than likely send it to you. If you don't have it, that means maybe you've moved houses. They don't know where you are. They don't know how to contact you. Get in touch with them. You'll get your NATIS documents if that's what you're referring to as logbook. Next question.
Second question comes from Iago, who's asking, I'm looking for a used car for a mix of in-town driving and road trips. Very common question. Someone looking for kind of best of both worlds. What do you recommend?
Well, Iago, very interesting name that. I like it, Iago. Given the requirements of, the combination, most people want a car that they can be versatile in. We'd recommend an SUV of some sort. It's a nice high ride, something with all-wheel drive. You don't need something with low-range 4x4 because it doesn't seem like you need it. And that'll make some remote areas more accessible. I mean, unless you want to climb mountains, you don't need anything much more than an SUV or an all-wheel drive. Don't try and now go and drive a BMW M235i Gran Coupé or a Mercedes-Benz AMG A35 4MATIC for your requirements, because it ain't going to work. But there's plenty SUV all-wheel drive options on the market, least of which are the Toyota RAV4, which is a good option, I think.
Yeah, or even Ford EcoSport's also very popular vehicle for that sort of thing.
Exactly.
Last but not least, question coming in from Phoenix. Buying a relatively new, previously repaired vehicle. So this Phoenix was in the process of buying a low mileage vehicle. And she or he was just worried about the concerns that, this car was actually previously repaired. But can you just kind of highlight some of the things that should be considered when purchasing a previously repaired vehicle?
This is a difficult one to answer. But I think there are some guidelines. The first thing is, the people, this is just my opinion. When you change things on a standard factory car, a car that comes out of the factory in a particular way, right? And you don't change those things with factory-related additions. So, for instance, you want to change the rims. You can change the rims to a nicer, bigger, chunkier set of rims, but change them to the ones that might have come out as an optional extra. The moment you start changing the car too much with aftermarket type body styling, parts, rims, tires, those kinds of things, your car actually begins to lose value. Because oftentimes we've spoken a lot about body styling when it comes to the air intakes of a car and how it changes the airflow through the engine bay. I think, as a matter of fact, either Chad or Lawrence mentioned this a while ago. Changing the airflow through the engine bay, you don't know what impact that has on the engine. So I would be very careful of a modified vehicle. Now, if you're never going to sell that car and you want to modify it, well, that's on you. But I don't know if I would buy a modified vehicle.
But ultimately, I think if there's been, I guess, not necessarily cosmetic changes, but mechanical changes,
even worse.
There are ways that consumers can actually go and find out if the car is okay, even if it has low mileage. I think it's in everyone's best interest to still do the checks.
Yeah, no, definitely do the checks. I mean, mechanical changes. Geez, I wouldn't touch a car that's had mechanical changes. Just because I don't know who did it, and in most instances, the car immediately loses its warranty. When you make an adjustment to the car. That should tell you something in itself, is that the OEM will not support a car where there's some aftermarket work done to it. You change something and they won't support it, and that rightly so, I think. So as far as accident damage vehicles go, that's also a difficult one. I would get an expert. If it's a little bumper bash, no problem. You've got to check whether things like chassis have been damaged or parts have been replaced with genuine parts or pirate parts, and make your decision based on checks, as you say, Wandile.
Awesome. Yeah, that's pretty much all the questions we have today. I think quite interesting. Good sphere and different range of questions.
Well, that's all we have time for, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to Wandile Sishi, who is always by my side at the AutoCentral show, South Africa's #1 motoring podcast powered by AutoTrader. And my name is George Mienie, your host, and we will see you next time. Cheers, Wandile.
George.